Thanks for having me. My name is Kate. I'm with ODOT. I work in our central office down in Columbus, so I'm really excited to be up in that Akron region this morning. Thanks to AMATS for having me, and all my colleagues in District 4 who you probably know better than me. I'm here to talk a little bit about active transportation, which is really everything I work on at the state level, and just really excited to spend a little bit of time this morning talking about how we can build walkable and bikeable communities, why it's so important for our communities, our region, and our state. And I also hope that you walk away with a better understanding, too, of some of the ODOT resources that we have available to help you with this. I also wanted to tell you just a little bit about myself, from kind of a walking and biking perspective. I grew up in the northern suburbs of Cincinnati, and I feel like unlike a lot of my peers, I'm 33, I got to walk to school every day in elementary school. So I mapped it the other day just to see what exactly my walk was. I couldn't remember. But I got to walk to school. It was just under a mile. It took me 20 minutes. And this is just a little clip of what my walk to school looks like. And a couple other examples of just my own walking and biking experience and kind of different reasons throughout my life that I walked and biked. I went on to go to university at Ohio State, got an internship downtown, showed up for my interview. It was like $8 to parking garage every day. So I ended up biking every day. Mapped it again. It was about 3 miles, which we consider very bikeable, so about a 15-minute bike ride for me to get to work. And then today, I still am able to commute occasionally by bike. My commute to work at ODOT Central Office, it's just west of downtown, is just about 10 miles. So it's just under an hour for me to bike to work. I do it occasionally. If you're really paying attention, you can see that there's a couple other shorter options that I can take if I wanted to bike to work. I go this way because it's almost all trail, which is really impressive, and almost all trail 10-mile connection for me to get to work is pretty awesome. I don't take the shorter route because I would have to travel up US 40, which is Broad Street in Columbus. I've done this many times to save time, but it kind of scares me. Traffic is 30, 35, or 40 miles per hour on this road, and every time I do it, I truly feel like it might be my last time. And then I feel like that, my life has changed recently. I also have an almost 2-year-old. We just put on the bike carrier to the bike like 2 weeks ago. And so now, just again, another thing that has changed that impacts how I get around and how I feel comfortable traveling by bike is very different now when I have her on the back of my bike. So that's definitely been a change as well. But enough about me. I'm really here to talk about you and to talk about some of the resources we have available to help communities invest in walkable and bikeable communities, and to really make sure that the future transportation system we have serves all people. So I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about why this matters, and I don't know that any of this will be revolutionary information, but wanted to share a couple reasons, why this work matters. I think it's important to come back to thinking about that and who we're planning for and designing for. And so just to kind of get us started, the first reason is that just fundamentally we know that walking and biking is an essential form of transportation. People rely every day on walking and biking to get places that they want to go in the state of Ohio. We know that nearly 1 out of every 12 households in Ohio doesn't have access to a vehicle, and so people really are relying on walking, biking, and transit in order to get where they need to go. We also know that there are population changes and demographic shifts that are happening in the state and in the region. We know that as Ohio's population ages, that there will be more people looking for transit or other options, and so the needs on our transportation system are going to continue to change over time. And then even as we look at younger generations, we also know that people are traveling differently in some of our younger generations. Back in the 80s, almost 50% of 16-year-olds would get their driver's license. That number is radically different today. This stat's a little bit old, but I think around like 22% of 16-year-olds in Ohio get their driver's license today. So a big shift. That's for a variety of reasons. Cost of owning and maintaining a car, access to vehicles, and other things. This is for the population scientists in the room. This is Ohio's population pyramid, just based on census data from 2020. Not exactly a pyramid. You can kind of see towards the bottom, really like a stable distribution of our population, and then kind of like a bulge in our population with our baby boomer population. So from a population perspective, this is helping us understand that we have this large Asian population. You can also see kind of the narrow base indicates to us kind of a lower birth rate. So that's how you interpret a population pyramid. So again, this is just helping us understand some of these shifts and understanding some of the needs that are going to be on our transportation system in the future. The second reason why this work is important and we should spend our limited time and money advancing it is because Ohioans want safe walking and biking options. And I'm not just making that up. I'm going to share a variety of statistics from ODOT's Transportation Preference Survey. We do this survey every 4 years, and it's great. We talk to like 10,000 people until we get a sample that is statistically significant at the county level. And so these statistics truly represent all Ohioans in terms of their transportation preferences, their priorities, which is important because, again, we have to spend our limited funds on things that matter to people. And through this survey, over 70% of people said that bicycle and pedestrian facilities are either important, very important, or extremely important. And I pulled out just a couple quotes from this survey from people that live in Ohio that I think kind of resonate. This person said, I live in a residential area and we have no sidewalk. A lot of people in my community walk or ride bikes. We also know that 90% of respondents agree that it's important, very important, or extremely important to meet the needs of people with disabilities and people without access to a vehicle. So again, just underscoring that people think this is important and they think we should advance this work. And a survey respondent said, I'm constantly reminded of the difficulty of public transit here when I see large areas of the city without proper sidewalks. I worry for folks with disabilities just trying to get to a bus stop in the first place. And most people, 60%, also value enhancing livability. One respondent said, I truly believe that more accessible transportation is the #1 issue that would improve my community. And then, I think this is my last stat, but overwhelmingly people care about safety. And we've known that for a long time. Anytime we talk to people about transportation, safety is always top of mind for them. 97% support improving transportation safety. And one resident said, I have a bike, I love to bike, I'm scared to bike here. There's too few bike lanes, and even in residential areas like mine, the traffic can be really fast. Other things that we know from the survey are that people are walking every day. So 1 in 5 people are walking 5 times or more per week. So very routinely, 5, 6, 7 times per week, about 20% of Ohioans report taking walking trips. And we also asked people about challenges that they face within 1 mile of their home, which potentially could be those walking trips. So just, again, to give you a little bit of insight into what people are talking about, some of the top 2 challenges that they report are really high speeds or lack of sidewalks. So 56% of people are experiencing high speeds within a mile of where they live. That's presenting a challenge, and almost 40% of people are experiencing a lack of sidewalks. And then this statistic is actually national, but we do know that almost half, 46% of vehicle trips in the United States are actually 3 miles or less. And you know, and I know from biking to my internship, 3 miles is exactly a 15-minute bike ride. So perhaps bikeable, but obviously our decision or ability to bike is drastically impacted by our built environment, and if it's safe, if it's convenient, if it's reliable. And if it's not, those are probably the So just to get just to make you think about some of the potential there is for giving people more options. And then one other survey we've done recently, not our transportation preference survey, not as statistically significant, but as part of our statewide pedestrian and bicycle plan several years ago, we surveyed Ohioans, asked them a lot of questions about walking and biking. And so as we think about where people do feel safe biking, what types of facilities actually make them feel comfortable enough to bike, these are the types of things we heard from people. Again, not revolutionary. People feel way more comfortable when they are separated from motor vehicle traffic. 92% of Ohioans feel very safe on things like paths. Most Ohioans feel safe in separated bike lanes, buffered bike lanes, and that starts to decrease a little bit as people are a little bit less protected from motor vehicle traffic. So, with only about 9% of survey respondents being comfortable in shared lanes or on paved shoulders. So this work is important because people want it. People in our communities want to have options. They want to feel safe walking and biking. We also know that walkable and bikeable communities are good for business and good for local economies. And I'll talk a little bit about this, but we just published a new report earlier this year helping to really quantify and communicate some of the economic benefits of investing in walkable and bikeable communities and building out our bicycle and pedestrian transportation network. And this report really sought to understand some of those cost savings and some of the return on investment of investing in bicycle and pedestrian projects across a variety of categories. And so, again, we know that this work is important to people. Based on some of the census data we have available and kind of understanding of trips, we think that millions of people are walking every day in Ohio and hundreds of thousands of people are biking every day. And when we look at the cost savings that exist, we think that our walking and biking infrastructure is saving Ohioans over $1.3 billion every single year. And this relates to, again, a variety of costs. The cost you save in operating your vehicle or fuel consumption or reduced fares. This quantifies societal benefits that come through safety and congestion and noise and delay, as well as the public health benefits associated with active transportation and walking and biking in lieu of maybe getting in your car. We also know that a variety of facilities, things like shared use paths or these more well-protected bike lanes, are really making neighborhoods more attractive places to live. And we're able to quantify the impact that proximity to some of our major trail networks actually has on property values. And we estimate that about there's an added $1.6 billion in home values that are generating about $182 million across the state of Ohio for local governments. We also know that these projects are improving safety, and these types of projects have data-driven impacts on safety. We know that when we build high-visibility crosswalks, that we can anticipate reducing crashes by about 50%. We know when we convert traditional bike lanes to separated bike lanes, that we are going to be reducing crashes by about 50%, and that comes with quantifiable benefits. And then lastly, the report talks a little bit about some of the economic benefit of tourism, and specifically we look at some of the cycling events that happen every year. We think a little over $8.8 million worth of business sales is associated with bicycle-related tourism. And then just from a capital spending perspective, as we do these construction projects, we think every $1 invested in these ped bike projects is generating $2 into our local economies. So check out that report if you want to dive into it a little bit more. It's pretty short and sweet and kind of has the headlines. And then we're also going to be publishing a benefit cost analysis tool later this month so that local governments and partners can better sketch out what they think these types of projects are going to cost, and then better evaluate the full range of benefits that you can anticipate coming from these investments. And so, again, all of our communities have limited time and money, and so these types of tools we hope can help communicate some of the trade-offs and inform some of those decisions. Okay, and last but not least, perhaps a little ironically, is safety first. So we, as you know, Ohioans care about safety. We heard that in our survey. Our local governments care about safety. ODOT really cares about safety. So safety is really important to us from a transportation perspective. It's a huge reason why ODOT is so invested in bicycle and pedestrian projects. We think it is really important to make sure that we provide safe options, particularly for our vulnerable road users. And we talked a lot recently about vulnerable road users, and just I want you to understand that people walking or biking, if they are involved in a crash on our roadways, they are 9 times more likely to be killed or to be really severely injured compared to anybody else traveling on our roadway system. And so from a statewide perspective, as we think about what we can do to really drive down the numbers of fatalities and serious injuries, we do think it's really important to focus on vulnerable road users. as they really are. They're the most vulnerable, they're the most likely to be killed or seriously injured in a crash. From a safety perspective, as we look over the last decade, we have seen a rise in pedestrian fatalities. 2021 was really the peak. I'm pretty sure this was our kind of highest statewide pedestrian fatality number on record. Every year since, we've seen a decrease in that number, so we feel like we're heading in the right direction. Bicycle fatalities tend to fluctuate a lot more from year to year, but again, across the last decade, there is a slight upward trend in bicycle fatalities as well. And those are just fatalities. That's just the tip of the iceberg. This chart is showing you over the last 5 years, both fatalities and, again, serious injuries, really life-altering injuries that are happening. And so just want to kind of paint that picture, the hundreds of people's lives who are impacted if they're involved in a crash, whether they're walking or biking on a roadway system. So we think this is really important. And just another comment on the data, just in the last year, a nonprofit advocacy organization in Cleveland, by Cleveland, published a report on the bicycle pedestrian crashes they saw in the city of Cleveland in 2024. And one of their findings was that way more crashes were actually happening than were making their way into kind of our crash data repository. And that's for a number of reasons. That could be another conversation. But, as we look at some of these crash data numbers, I just also want you to know that there are more stories behind those numbers than just the numbers that we're seeing in our crash data, particularly for people walking and biking. As with all data, we are kind of have chronically a gap in some of our pedestrian and bicycle related data. And so I thought it was interesting, not every city has dug into all of their 911 reports to find this information. So I just wanted to share that for the city that has done it, our crash data system had 271 headlight crashes in it, but they were able to kind of uncover that there were actually over 600 crashes that happened in the city just over the last year. And on my previous slide, 102 of those crashes were kids, which is extra sad. A few more things on crash trends. Even though we have data limitations that I just shared, in general, I do feel like we know a lot about crash trends in Ohio. We know a lot about where crashes are happening, how they're happening, some of the contributing circumstances. So I just wanted to share a few tidbits with you because it can be really helpful as we try to address safety issues and advance safety for vulnerable road users. It's really helpful to kind of understand what some of those challenges look like. These are just a couple of images of the top crash types that we see in the state of Ohio. So in general, for pedestrians that are either killed or seriously injured, this is kind of how these crashes are happening. Pedestrians are trying to get across the street, mid-block. These are happening at intersections with traffic continuing straight. People are walking along the road where there are not accommodations for them. And then we also see really left turns are presenting a lot of challenges when it comes to our left turns pop out a lot in our crash data, which we also see with bicycle crashes. So these are our top severe bicycle crashes, riding out at intersections. Motorist failure to detect is number 2. That's where someone maybe doesn't see the bicyclist and collides with them from the back, or maybe doesn't have time to stop, or maybe doesn't give them enough space when passing. Riding out mid-block, a lot of times the situation is maybe like coming out of a commercial, like strip mall or something, at like a mid-block intersection where they're entering traffic. And then again, the left turn is something that really presents this like additional safety challenge, almost twice as much as right turns. So those are a couple of things we're seeing. Something else that I feel like we've really come to understand over the last 5 to 10 years is kind of some of our high-risk roads. We know that about 56%, so the majority of our pedestrian severe crashes are actually happening on just about 8% of our roadway system. So the arterial roadway system in Ohio really has this hugely disproportionate amount of crashes. And this really shapes how things like ODOT safety program invest in safety, how the types of projects we want to do, the types of roadways that we want to see these projects on. And so just knowing that most of these severe crashes are happening on 8% of our network is really important to know. And again, really, really shapes how we might address this issue. And this is just a map. This is part of our highway safety map, or our safety map viewer that ODOT posts. I have turned on the pedestrian priority segments. which is really helping us, again, understand where we believe there are high-risk roads for pedestrians and where we are really interested in investing in pedestrian safety projects. And so, just in terms of working with ODOT, this is a good way for us to communicate some of those statewide priorities and to work with local partners to help fund projects that are going to address those high-risk systems. We also know when it comes to safety that speed plays such a major role, and I feel like we talk about this like more and more and more and more, but it is so critical when it comes particularly to vulnerable road user safety. We know that at 20 miles per hour, which is the speed we require people to stay at or under in school zones, very few people are killed if you strike them at 20 miles per hour, and that's why we have those speed school zone limits. But as we go above 25 miles per hour, there is this like exponential increase in the risk of dying. And so sometimes you see signs like 25 alive, like that's kind of what that means is like there's a huge difference between kind of traveling over versus under 25 miles per hour. That's when the risk of death exponentially begins to increase as you go faster. And so, even just as we get to 30 miles per hour, the likelihood of dying if you're hit is 20%, and then again, that more than doubles at 40 miles per hour. And so, I think more and more we just talked about things like speed management and making sure that, if we aren't able to find dedicated space to provide people walking and biking, the other thing we can think about is trying to manage speeds so that what you do have is safer for everybody that you expect to be there. So speed plays a really big role. And then just a few other kind of contributing factors, a few other final thoughts. More Ohioans may be walking and biking, particularly again with some of these demographic shifts. Vehicles have also gotten larger and heavier, and I'm not going to get into that, but it is really fascinating research, kind of the correlation of vehicle size and weight and the impact that it has on our communities is so interesting. I'm thinking about buying a car next year, and I have to get a small car, but so something to look into in your free time. We also, motorists may be driving with more distractions, we all have smartphones, and then just in general, our roads and streets were really historically designed, over the past 50, almost 100 years to serve cars and not people. And I think a lot of that is shifting and changing, but there's a lot of work to do and a lot of retrofitting in order to achieve that. And I don't talk really much about land use here, but even just, the suburbanization that we're seeing across the state, this is exacerbating some of the challenges that people walking, biking, or taking transit face, and is an ongoing challenge as we kind of think about the future. Okay. So taking action, a few final thoughts from me today. I just wanted to share some of the things I think we should be doing to take action, and how we can invest in walkable, bikeable communities, kind of what that looks like, and share a couple of resources. So the image above, I feel like, is a good way of summing up sort of like the challenge, like the problem statement when it comes to making our communities walkable and bikeable. This maybe looks a little bit similar to the traffic engineer's vision of a perfect road. I think you can tell I'm a planner, but at the top, we don't have a lot of separated facilities. You see somebody's trying to get across the street, number one crash type in Ohio, trying to get across the street mid-block. There's maybe not a great opportunity for them to get across the street. Drivers probably aren't going to stop for them. It doesn't seem like people should be crossing there. They might be going too fast to want to stop or to see them. And a variety of other things. And then, everything about the bottom image, I think, are kind of these like countermeasures that we know work. These are treatments that make our roads safer, they make our communities more walkable and bikeable and livable. And so this includes things like providing separated facilities. We have a bike lane at the bottom. This bike lane has some nice green paint in the intersection, really helping with visibility for people traveling through the intersection. You saw me talk a lot about crashes at intersections. There's lighting, there's a median, which is some natural traffic calming, kind of that speed management. This is also reducing the exposure that pedestrians have to vehicles as they're trying to get across the street. It's easier to get across the street, and it's also more intuitive for drivers to know to expect people there to yield appropriately and things like that. So really a win-win-win with kind of all of these treatments on the bottom. And then a few other thoughts, in terms of some of the survey information I shared with you, people feel much more comfortable in separated facilities. And so opportunities to make space for these facilities is really, really critical. But again, if maybe there isn't space to do it all on some of our streets, a lot of our bigger cities and urban areas are faced with challenges of just maybe not having enough space. Some other opportunities could relate to, again, slowing things down to make them safer for everybody. We also think it's really important to plan for connected networks. So having a vision of what your bicycle and pedestrian network is in the future really helps communities to chip away at that network over time. And I know AMATS is going to talk a lot about some of the work they do to help with planning, and ODOT too provides assistance to help communities plan out some of those networks so that you can integrate these improvements into everything you do in a strategic way, which is number 3. It's so critical to get this work done as part of everything we do. It can be challenging to do standalone pedestrian and bicycle projects, and sometimes they're really important to do, and other times we make progress by getting them into ongoing projects that we have going on. That's how we get a lot of our connections built, and is a really efficient way to get it done. And then I think doing what you can while working towards your vision is something to keep in mind as well. We talk sometimes about not letting perfection get in the way of progress, and I think this comes up a lot in this world is, trying to make improvements incrementally as you can with the resources and opportunities that you have available. An example of this, this is an ODOT project down in Hamilton County. They had a resurfacing project on US 50. This is a pretty key kind of bicycle connection in the region. There's a trail on one side, there's a trail on the other side. Ideally, this would have been a shared use path, but as part of this resurfacing project that was happening, this was what we were able to get done. We got in a buffered bike lane. It's pretty high speed, but it's definitely better than what was there previously, and has made it safer for people that are biking there. And people are biking on this roadway, and there have been, prior to this project, there have been bicycle fatalities. So it was really important to get something in, and so I just think that's really important. And then local leadership and working with partners is just so important for getting this work done. Local governments play obviously a huge role in the walking and biking networks across the state of Ohio. We think it is so important to work with and support local governments in this work. And again, you all have limited money, lots of priorities, and so having support for this work is really transformational at the local level. So it's important, the time is now. We think that some of the shifts going on in the state will make this even more important in the future. Perhaps some of our historically overbuilt roadways can provide an opportunity for this. If it's hard to find space or to get right-of-way to do these projects, there's really opportunities to kind of transform the public right-of-way that we do have and really reuse some of the space that is available to make it work for everybody. And safety is a huge priority. It's a huge priority for our administration at the state. There's a lot of funding available for safety, and so it's a great time to work with ODOT on safety. It's something that is obviously our number one priority. So I'll close out with a few resources. I just wanted to touch on some of the flagship resources that ODOT has available for local governments and partners. Obviously, funding is one of the main things that we do when it comes to walking and biking. We provide funding through a variety of our funding programs. We have one of the largest highway safety programs in the country at right around $185 million annually. And we're very interested in advancing vulnerable road user safety as part of that program. We also have our Safe Versus School program, which I manage, a little bit smaller, $5 million annually, specifically focused on communities that are looking to make it safer and more possible for kids to walk and bike to school. And then obviously with our NPOs play a large role in that as well. Just a quick snippet in terms of investments in bicycle and pedestrian projects across ODOT. You can tell that we've had a huge increase in investment in this work. We think it's really important. Our highway safety program has dedicated more funding than ever to some of these projects. And then beyond funding, we also have a variety of other tools and guidance that you might find helpful. We have guidance on how to develop plans. We have design guidance to help you design bicycle and pedestrian facilities to kind of meet the needs of your context. And we also have data. We we collect and house and communicate a lot of data, and this includes data related to walking and biking. On the left, this is our TIMS database. This is showing our state US bike route system. So just like local governments and regional areas, ODOT is also looking at what does our state system for bicycling look like, and that information is available. There's facilities. Local governments can understand how to tie into that system. So information like that and more is available in TIMS as part of our active transportation map viewer. And then I talked a lot about safety data today. We have, again, a robust safety data website. Shoulder safety is actually kind of new. People love it. They say it's really easy to kind of evaluate, analyze crashes, and better communicate, right? All of these are communication tools so that we can make better decisions about transportation. And then lastly, we also provide technical assistance on a variety of things. I also manage our Active Transportation Academy, tons of workshops and trainings, ways for local governments to get assistance on whether it's planning or whether it's various trainings or helping you conduct a walk audit or just things like that that we think can be really helpful for communities to advance walking and biking goals. And then right now we are accepting applications for local school travel plan assistance and active transportation plan assistance through December 1st. So a lot of resources. I hope you know that ODOT is a partner at the table when it comes to advancing bicycle and pedestrian safety and thinking about walkable and bikeable communities. And again, thanks to our District 4 staff in the room too, who are really your frontline resource for kind of engaging with us on programs and opportunities. So that's it. Thanks for having me.